So when Susan and Harry asked me to talk a little bit about something that I'm interested in, they mentioned my passion for sailing. And I think when I mention sailing to most people, they sort of think of something idyllic like this situation, either the one on the left or the one on the right. In fact, if you would ask my children, or certainly my wife, what sailing meant, they would prefer that sailing in my household actually looked like this as well. It couldn't be further from the truth. I think that for my life, most sailing has been a little bit more like this. It's unfortunately not as tranquil or anywhere near as pleasant and comfortable as the preceding pictures. I've raced sailboats since I was a little child, and I raced them for a long time. So when I came out of school, I was particularly keen on it, and so I happened to race a boat that you see here, which is a single-handed boat, a laser, and I took it around the world and tried to make it into the Olympic trials and make it into the Olympic Games. The closest I got, I did qualify for the trials, and ran at it, I think three quadrenniums, 3 goes at it to get that far, and had an awful lot of fun doing it, and had a very, very patient wife who allowed me to pursue that passion, and some very patient employers as well. When I went through that process, one of the things that I used to love about yacht racing itself was the fact that, and you'll probably see this on the photograph, there's only one person there. It's one sail, it's one person, and it's incredibly simple. There's really not much to the boat itself, and so that essentially means that most of the complexities associated with a lot of sailboats are eliminated from this. I'm a fairly simple person, and I like to keep things fairly simple, and so this worked particularly well for me. After I finished I did the trials in '96 and again in '04, and I took a break because I had young children at the time, and so I took about a decade off and did very little sailing at all. Took my kids sailing, and a little bit more like the first picture. And after that, I then started. I talked to my wife and managed to convince her. It'd been long enough since I sailed to convince her, maybe as a family we should start sailing again. And so then the big hope for my children was, well, maybe we'll get a boat with a house, or a house with a boat, something we can go down inside. And so we negotiated, and they were kind enough to allow us to sort of live in the middle of that. And there's just a little bit of footage here. We ended up choosing a boat called a J70, and luckily it has the level of competition that comes with many of the Olympic classes, but it has the accommodation certainly to bring the family along. And so what I found is that where I ended up sailing in the single-handed boat is so drastically different than where I've started to sail this boat that I think after the first regatta I called the broker and said, yeah, I think I'd like to put this back on the market, please. It truly was a disaster, and I said to my wife, "Oh my God, what's happened? I mean, this is tragic. I'm having no fun. It's completely miserable. It's nothing like I remember, and I'm truly hopeless. I have literally gone from the front of the fleet to the back of the fleet. I am the worst sailor, in the history of sailing." And so my wife said, you got to stick it out a little bit. So I stuck it out the first year. I stuck it out the second year. This is my 3rd year at it. And a couple of things have struck me about this, and I thought I would summarize them here. So these were my happy times over on the left. It was just me. There were no management issues. This was not a leadership issue. It was one person. If there was any management, it was my wife managing me. It was very simple. It was a hell of a lot less money, and it was much more successful. And so now we have changed the paradigm here, and I truly am back to square one in this. And what I would say is that when I think a little bit about it, there's several things that I take away from this sort of transformative process. The first one, I realized that being as an individual, I had no need to be connected. I didn't need to be connected to the yacht club. I didn't really need to be connected to anybody other than my training partners. When you try to race a boat where you regularly need extra people, the network matters. you need to have that connection. So I have been steadily rebuilding that. I've also realized that you need to seek out experts, that you need to truly go and find people that I don't have time that I had in my previous decades of life to just go out and stumble around until I found how to be fast. I found experts to help me with that. And I also realized that like so many things, that there's not that many opportunities, certainly not so much in business, to go back to basics, to start from square one again. And in some cases, it's immensely frustrating, but in other ways, it's incredibly freeing. And so I have modified my reward structures. The true reward is not necessarily about winning and being at the front, but it's about just being successful at just lots of little things that we're trying to execute on the boat. So it's an interesting journey, and it's a fascinating one. And I do think about a lot about to Harry's conversations on leadership and connecting with other people and some of the things that leadership brings when we're trying to stumble our way around the course. So that's my story.